good. Let me just bring you all in on this. I'll start with you, Michael Steele. This is sort of like Seinfeld, right? It's a campaign about nothing because critical race theory isn't taught. So what is this a campaign about?
It's a campaign about that. It's about how
nothing.
I can get you, how I can get you to emote about something that your child has no clue about what it is. And I would guarantee you 90% of those parents have no idea what it is. But yet they've been told that this is something that they should be afraid of because unfortunately for McAuliffe, he stepped into it by saying parents have no voice in this space. They have no interest or should have any interest in what goes on in the classroom. Well, we all know that that's patently not true. Parents do have a concern and interest in this space. So to say that without clarification as to what he meant, allowing Youngkin to then frame the narrative around that issue, in this campaign has done to McAuliffe what defund the police did to Democrats in 2020.
Yes. I want to bring you in. I mean, I remember Claire McCaskill when Joe Biden, as a candidate, went to the microphones and said, I am not for defunding the police. He made sure that that didn't stick to him. Was McAuliffe agile and deft? And look, again, Republican disinformation is never the Democratic side's fault, but it is the landscape on which Republican campaigns are waged right now. That is the sad reality. And I wonder if the fact that voter after voter at Youngkin rally says, I'm here because of his stance on critical race theory. This is like me banning ghosts from the set. There aren't any ghosts. I can ban them. But I mean, he is for banning something that isn't taught in the classroom, and it's bringing him 1,000 people in Loudoun County the day before Election Day. Did the other side push back against the lie and then push back against the attack effectively enough?
Well, I think what is really going on here is no matter whether it was critical race theory or another cultural issue, the Republicans are only campaigning on cultural issues now.
Right.
And this is all about that. This is all, and we all know, I think what Terry McAuliffe meant is that school boards decide policy in the schools, and the school boards are elected by parents, and certainly parents are going to be engaged and involved, we hope, in their child's education. But it would be chaos if every child's parent was deciding curriculum. Obviously, that wouldn't work. But here's the thing, Nicole. What's going to happen today is going to turn on one thing, and that is the big T, turnout. Yeah. And here's the two strategies of the two campaigns. The Republican candidate is doing anger, grievance. You should be in charge. These people, these nameless elitists are telling your students, your kids, things they shouldn't. And on the other hand, McAuliffe is running on fear for turnout. And fear of what? Donald J. Trump. And the most fascinating thing about this race is that Trump has not reacted to being pushed away. And other Republicans are going to think they can get away with this. I am shocked that Donald Trump is letting a Republican candidate say, you're toxic, stay away from me. And that's what this guy's gotten away with. He told Trump, you're toxic, stay away. And Trump, by and large, did.
David Plouffe, I wonder if you can sort of weigh in on all the contours of these two campaigns, closing messages, and then the broader dynamic that we're, I think, inching at but not really getting to, that it's really freaking close in Virginia.
Right. Well, Nicole, historically, as you know, going back decades, in the year after a presidential election, we have governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey, and historically, they tend to vary quite a bit from the result just a year before. So I think we can overreact to these results tonight. And whether McAuliffe wins by a point or two or Youngkin wins by a point or two, it matters a great deal to the state of Virginia, who their governor is. But, yeah, that's erosion for the Democrats. So the Democrats, no matter what happens tonight in terms of the W or the L, you've got to figure out what happened to those voters in Virginia. Suburban swing voters, turnout. Did the Republicans get better turnout? Do we get weaker turnout? Diagnose what happened. And then the trickier thing is always to figure out what to do about it. A year's a long time in politics. In this election, yes, I think Youngkin has tried to drive wedges on education. I will point out, though, he's blanketed the state with ads, though, that have also said, I'm going to historically boost spending on education. I'm going to raise teacher pay. So, yeah, he's done the critical race theory and tried to divide the state with culture politics, but he's also tried to be a different kind of Republican. This election also takes place with, insanely high gas prices, because of the Delta variant, people are still stuck having to deal with COVID. The economy is growing, but not as quickly as people would like. So it's not the greatest environment for Terry McAuliffe running in Virginia. So to me, Youngkin has gotten away with, the wink and the nod to the base, so they're okay with him. But he's also to mainstream voters, which is why he was in Loudoun last night. He thinks he can get those margins down, maybe below 20 points. And if he can do that, he's got a very good chance to win. But I think there's a lot going into this race. But for me, in terms of next year, which I know is quickly where the discussion will go, you're going to see erosion. And so Democrats have to be real about that. Some of that's unique to Virginia. Some of it's unique to New Jersey. This is a tough environment. All that's true. But you still had erosion. So where did that happen with the electorate? What can happen? And I'm optimistic because a year from now, the pandemic may be endemic. The economy could be really rolling. Democrats maybe actually get something done in Washington. And the Republicans are going to stuck, to Claire's point, really just trying to campaign on culture wars and kissing Donald Trump's ample behind, which I don't think is a great strategy in a mid-year election necessarily. So I think the Democrats can get on a stronger footing, but they're heading into this election, with I think some pretty serious headwinds. And the thing you have to be realistic is, particularly if McAuliffe wins tonight, which I hope he does, by a point or two, you can't say, oh, everything's okay. It's not.
Right.
Because the Democrats lost House seats in 2020, winning Virginia by 10 points. So to hold on to the House, you probably have to have a political environment next year where you're at least winning by 10 points in states like Virginia, if not a little bit more.
You know what's amazing to me, Michael Steele, is the difference between the Republican base and the Democratic base. Youngkin is running on two lies. He's both for and against Donald Trump, right? He repeated the election fraud claims in the primary, contributed to his ability to win. He's now faux distancing himself from Trump. I'm not sure I really buy the distance. Trump did an event for him yesterday, so the fact he didn't show up doesn't mean he didn't accept his warm embrace. The second lie is one we've been talking about, that on day one, he's going to ban ghosts. I'm sorry, another fake thing, critical race theory from being taught in the Virginia public schools. And we think he might win, right? That's what everyone is saying. The Democrats are, and listen, politics are what they are. Your relationship with your voters are what they are. But it's just amazing how low the bar is for a Republican. And you hear all sorts of things contributing to Democratic sort of questions and concerns about turnout. The stalled agenda in Washington, the debate between progressives and one Joe Manchin, the lack of attention and focus on voting rights, the lack of attention on police reform, the lack of attention on the insurrection, the inability for Merrick Garland to hold Trump. I mean, there are so many more things Democrats have to do to be successful than Republicans.
Yeah, and it's because of the nature, as you said, of their base and how their base engages politically, which has always been a challenge for the established order of leadership to try to actually conduct politics, to do what you need to do to win. The reality of it is the Republican base at the end of the day is, they got a few things that they're going to check off as a leader for them, whether it's an issue like abortion or CRTs, the social issue. Democrats have many more that they feign and fawn over, and they lose sight of the political strategy of actually getting across the finish line.
Yes.
And so you have this nature of politics being played out where one team is actually playing the game and the other team is more cerebral about it and gets upset when someone tries to change the rule over on that part of the field or does not acknowledge the rules on this part of the field. And instead of finding a counter strategy, in this case, having just taken the 19 damn senators who voted for Joe Biden's infrastructure bill to build roads and bridges, pass that sucker over the summer, and you have a completely different fall campaign right now. Terry McAuliffe is up by 10 points in places like Loudoun County and in the northern Virginia area. And it's a very different narrative for Glenn Youngkin to run his campaign, because then he's running against a much stronger headwind. Basically, the Democrats folded their sails on something that was given to them by Republicans and have coasted into election where now, guess what? Republicans have actually moved the damn port. So you don't even have a port to pull into. So.
Yeah.